Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we are on the fourth chapter of this book, The Matchless Gift, Krsna Consciousness. The third chapter, we saw how Srila Prabhupada spoke about atonement, that for whatever sins we have done, we have to atone for it. Like example, capital punishment, which is actually a benediction for the person who has done the sin, because one does not suffer again in future lives. The beginning of this book, we have seen Prabhupada speaking about how Parikshit Maharaj is asking about what is the escape method of a person suffering from sins and hellish life. So the whole thread is coming forward into this section of chapter 4 as well. So let us see what Prabhupada continues to speak to us. So this chapter is called Learning Tapasya, Self-Control. If one does not come to Krishna conscious, he may be relieved for time being from the reactions of sinful activities, but he will again commit transgression. Right? Prabhupada gave the example of in the earlier chapter 3, that you put a dog on the throne of a king, right? But just the moment you show them the shoe, the dog is again going to run after the shoe, although seated like a king. So similarly, all of us have these lower natures, bad habits. We do mistakes, we atone for them, but again, we do mistakes. So it's like, you keep cutting the grass, the grass keeps growing back. What is a permanent solution? You have to weed it. You have to remove it from the roots. So Krishna consciousness is that it removes the sinful tendencies and not just the sinful effect. Sinful reactions are destroyed by atonement, but tendency to sin can only be destroyed by bhakti. Therefore, Parikshit Maharaj says, Kwachin nivartate bhadrat, kwachin charati tatpuna, prayaschitam atopartam. Repetitive sinning and atoning seems to me, Parikshit Maharaj is saying, like nothing but a waste of time. He gave the example of an elephant which cleanses his body, kunjara sauchavat, thoroughly in the lake of reservoir, but as soon as he comes onto shore, he takes the dust and throws it all over his body and immediately becomes dirty again. Thus, Parikshit Maharaj says that although one may cleanse himself in the process of atonement, if he again commits the same sinful acts, what is the use? Therefore, the second question put by Parikshit Maharaj to Sukadev Goswami is very important. How can one ultimately become free from all contamination brought about by the material modes of nature? If one cannot achieve liberation, what is the use of atonement? So atonement should lead us to full positive life, right? That one actually achieves liberation, not just go up, come down like that. In answer, Sukadev Goswami said that merely counteracting karma, fruitive activities, actions, by other means, cannot bring one's miseries to a final end. For example, the United Nations is attempting to establish peace in the world, but they cannot stop war. War breaks out again and again. After the First World War, statesmen and diplomats manufactured the League of Nations. But then the Second World War came, and now they have devised the United Nations. But war is still going on. Current age we see, right? So much war is going on. Everyone is condemning it, not agreeing for it, but then still it's happening despite all this. The actual goal is to stop war, but that cannot be done. By one action, war is created, and by another action, war is stopped for the time being. But again, at the next opportunity, there is another war. War for technology, war for oil, war for this, war for religion, war for land, war for political means. The cycle of sinful activities and atonement is like that. What we actually want is to be free from suffering and war, but that does not happen. Sukadev Goswami said that one kind of war causes disturbance, another kind of war stops it for some time, but that is not the ultimate solution to the problem. Sukadeva states that these troubles happen due to ignorance. Avitvat adhikaritvat. Avitvat means lack of knowledge, not knowing. Avitvat adhikaritvat prayaschitam vimarshanam. Real atonement is performed in knowledge. Why is there fighting and why are there miseries? Unless these why questions, which in the Vedas are called Kena Upanishad, arise in one's mind, one is not fulfilling the proper function of human life. So Kena Upanishad is all these beautiful questions, questioning existence of life. So human life is, we have to, that's what Vedas mean. Veda means knowledge. Veda means knowledge. It's a whole, huge library of knowledge. Because human life is, we must inquire. That is human beings. So these questions must arise. Why am I suffering? Wherefrom have I come? What is my constitutional position? Where shall I go after death? Why am I put into a miserable form of life? Why are there birth, death, old age, and disease? I don't like any of this, but it's still happening, coming to me. Why? How can these questions be solved? Sukadeva Goswami says, Nash Nashnata patyam evanam vadhayo bhibhyavantihi evam niyamakrat rajan shanai shemaya kalpate. If one wants to actually stop diseased life, vyadhayo, he must follow regulative principle, patyam. Right? If you want to stop vyadhi, disease, one has to follow some patya or some rules and regulations. Prabhupada gives an example. If a person does not follow the program given by the physician to cure his disease, he cannot be cured. Similarly, if one does not think or act wisely as per Vedic knowledge prescribes, how can he stop problems of life? Simply by atonement, there may be a temporary suppression of difficulties, but they will arise again. So one is suffering from one condition, he does some kind of atonement, comes out of it, but the big picture, the big solution, right, is not solved yet. Sukadeva Goswami says that in the material or sinful life, we act in a way in which we are forced to commit sins and suffer as a result. This is so, and if we want to stop the cycle of suffering and victimization, we have to advance in knowledge. Isn't it so true? We don't want to hurt, we don't want to kill, but still it happens. You go to the sink to wash your hands, and there's some maybe ants or something, and if they get flushed down. For the ants, it's like a tsunami, just gulfing them. And to our best degree, we may avoid it, not avoid it. It's difficult. This whole material world existence means sin at every step. Ordinary people or karmis, fruitive workers, fruitive actors, who work all day and night to get some enjoyable results and then again suffer. Thus, the problems of such karmis are never solved. People nowadays work so hard just to get something. And then after getting it, they suffer even more. People work hard to get a lot of money. After they get money, they suffer. Why? A lot of enemies are created. It is suggested, therefore, that one elevate himself to the platform of knowledge as prescribed in Srimad Bhagavatam. The first necessity is tapasya, or acceptance of austerity. If a doctor advises a diabetic patient not to eat, but to starve or fast for some days, although no one likes to starve or fast, the patient must voluntarily accept starvation or fasting if he wants to be cured. This is tapasya, voluntary acceptance of a miserable condition. It's a very beautiful line. What is the definition of tapasya? Voluntary acceptance. A difficult situation, but voluntary accepted, it is good for us. Right? Like they say, you need to, you can't build muscles if you don't sweat. You need to sweat a little, flex a little, right? In the gym people, or they say they need to tear muscles to build muscles, isn't it? So like that, there must some difficulty, some push must be there to improve. The ability to do this is good, and human life is meant for that purpose. Indeed, Vedic culture prescribes tapasya, and one can see many tapasvis undergoing austerities in India. In winter, they stand in water up to their necks and meditate. Standing in water during severe cold is not comfortable, but they voluntarily do it. In summer, they also ignite fires all around them, sit in the midst and the blaze and meditate. These are examples of severe tapasya undertaken by many ascetics in India. So, of course, Prabhupada is not going to tell us to do this, but I just thought something interesting that we can share in this regard on tapasya. So, in Ayurveda, there are mentions of 13 kinds of vegas or urges of the body. You can see the list here, right? Urge to urinate, to defecate, different kinds of urges. And all these urges, sometimes the doctors will tell you that you should not control them. But actually, if you look at the list, these 13 things, some things you must never control because they harm the body, like mala, mutra, tyagam, defecating and urinating. You should not stop it, that urge to do it, because it will hurt the body. But other things should be regulated, like the urge of hunger, the urge of thirst. That's why fasting comes. And so many other bodily things. Some things you should never stop, some things you should learn to regulate. Right? Breathing, for example, is one, the last 13. Right? Breathing. So breathing, they say that, oh, it's an urge, you should. But we know pranayama means regulating the breathing. So like that, some people think that these Vegas should be excessively indulged in. They should never be stopped. But not true. Some things you cannot stop, it's bad for you, and some things you should regulate. And if you do it, it becomes very good for the body. So continuing, some tapasya is certainly required. Without it, one cannot advance in spiritual life or knowledge. If we simply engage in the animal propensities of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, not accepting the tapasya process, human life is a failure. If one wants to become an initiated member of our Krsna Consciousness Society, if one wants to become an Iskcon devotee, we first of all ask him to undergo tapasya. In the Western countries, especially, it is a great tapasya to give up illicit sex life, intoxication, meat eating, and gambling. Although we require only these austerities, it is very difficult to observe them. The Prabhupada is saying at that time in 1960s, 1970s in Western countries, but factually today all over the world, in Eastern, Asian, wherever, everywhere to give up these four things, it is very difficult. So Prabhupada remembers a story. In England, a wealthy aristocrat inquired from a Vaishnava god brother. So this scene, I'll tell you, share with you. This is Prabhupada's, Srila Prabhupada's god brother. His name is Bhakti Saranga Goswami Maharaj. So I'm just wanting to show his picture here. So you can see here. And he became one of the acharyas of Sri Narsimha Chaitanya Mutt. So he had gone to London on the instruction of his spiritual master, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And at that time, he had, met with one lord who was previously the governor of Bengal. So his name is the Lord of Zetland. Oh, Prabhupada remembers him as Lord Ronald Shea, like that. Right? So he's the second Marquis of Zetland. Zetland, or now modern day it's called Shetland. It is actually a northern, very extreme northern part of Scotland. And this is a Scottish gentleman. Srila Prabhupada, when he spoke about him in one lecture, Prabhupada mentions that he has actually seen him when he was, Prabhupada's in college. Prabhupada's in college, he had seen him. That time he was one of the governors of Bengal under the British. So he's a Scottishman. And Prabhupada says that he has a lot of fascination for India. He's very, knowledgeable about India. The Prabhupada's looking, amazing. So when he went back to the London, UK at the time, Prabhupada's godbrother, later ages, this Bhakti Saranga Goswami Maharaj, had actually gone there to preach to him. So let's see what happens. This Lord of Zetland, right, this person, the aristocrat, he asked to Prabhupada's godbrother, Swamiji, can you make me a Brahmana? The Swamiji replied, our Bhakti Saranga Goswami Maharaj, he said, yes, why not? You just have to observe these four principles. No illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling, no meat eating. And what did he reply? Impossible, impossible, impossible. He was shocked, the Lord of Zetland. The Britisher replied, yes, it is impossible, for in Europe or in America or today all over the world, self-indulgence is the way of life from the very beginning. Indian gentlemen often come to the West to learn these indulgences, and they think themselves to be advancing, right? When Indians start eating meat, start eating beef, they feel that, oh, we are forward-thinking Indians. Indians are automatically taught tapasya through their Vedic culture, because in a lot of the Vedic culture, from young, when people observe festivals and observe different kinds of prayers, this is very natural, walking barefooted, living a simple life, fasting, doing a lot of worship, paraphernalia, getting ready things for pujas, a lot of tapasya. But they come to America to forget that culture and accept another type of life. The real fact is, however, that if one wants to advance in spiritual understanding and solve all these problems of life, he must accept a life of tapasya, austerity, and restriction. Restriction is for human beings, not for animals. We encounter restrictions daily in our common dealings. Very nice example Prabhupada is giving. We cannot drive a car on the left or run a red light. He is giving for the Western countries, right? Without risking apprehension by the law, like that Prabhupada is saying. So we cannot do all this because we will be caught up by the law. But then Prabhupada says, if a dog, however, walks on the left side of the street or crosses against the red light, it is not punished because it is an animal. The law therefore makes distinctions between human beings and animals because human beings supposedly have advanced consciousness. If we do not follow rules and regulations, we again lapse into animalism. Beautiful line, right? So some people say, I do not want to follow rules. I want to be free. But actually, what makes us civil, what we call as a civilization, is these rules and regulations. Apparently, propaganda is being made celebrating freedom as opposed to regulated life. But one who sees things as they are can understand that freedom from all restriction is animal life. That if one does not have this, if one doesn't follow any restriction, then actually that is animal life. Therefore, Sukadeva Goswami recommends tapasya. If we want actual freedom from the problems of life, we have to accept a life of austerity. Bondage to material life is the only other alternative. Right? So austerity, else we are bound to material life. What is tapasya? What is austerity? The first principle of austerity is Brahmacharya, restricted sex life. The real meaning of Brahmacharya is complete celibacy. And according to Vedic culture, in the beginning of life, one should strictly follow the regulations of Brahmacharya. When he is grown up, the Brahmachari can marry and become a Grihastha. And as a Grihastha, he can have sex. But in the Brahmacharya life, strict celibacy is the rule. In the present age, people have become degraded for want of tapasya because they are not taught how to execute tapasvi life. Criticism for its own sake will not do. One must be effectively trained in the life of tapasya. So in the Vedas, it is said that those who execute a regulated life of tapasya are Brahmanas. Etat aksharam gargi vidit tasma lokat praiti sa Brahmanaha. Etat aksharam gargi avidit tasma lokat praiti sa Krpana. So this is a verse that comes in the Aranyanka Upanishad. It is spoken to the daughter of Gargacharya, Gargi, who's a great scholar in the Vedas. And basically, these two verses, these two lines, Vakyas are saying who is a Brahmana, who is a Krpana. Two kinds of people. A Brahmana, one who's very broad minded and who knows how to perfect life, and one who is a Krpana, who is a miser, a stingy poker, as they say, right, who does not know how to benefit one's life. For example, if you give a person $1 million and they utilize the $1 million to take 2 million, to make $2 million, that is a Brahman. But if you give a person $1 million and that person just keeps with themselves and do not utilize it for self-benefit, nor for any other benefit, that is called a miser, Krpana. Right? So one who before dying, Viditasma Lokat, before leaving this world, actually know who God is, that is called a Brahmana. But one who just dies without even understanding real purpose of life, that is called a Krpana. Everyone is dying, for no one can live here permanently. But one who dies after executing a life of tapasya is a Brahmana. And one who dies like a cat or a dog without executing tapasya is called a Krpana. These two words are used frequently in Vedic literature, Brahmana and Krpana. Krpana means miser and Brahmana refers to a liberal, broad-minded person. Brahma janati Brahmana. So this is another Smriti Vakya. Janmana jayate Shudra. Everyone is born a Shudra, uncultured laborer, worker class person. Janmana jayate Shudra, because no one has training. Samskare bhavit vija. But through training, through samskaras, one becomes a twice born, vijaha. Right? Veda patat bhavet vipro. But one who knows Vedas, expert in Vedas, they become a vipraha, expert. Brahma janati iti Brahmana. Then who becomes a Brahmana? One who knows God. Brahma janati iti Brahmana. One who knows the supreme, the absolute truth, is a Brahmana. But one who does not know is an animal. This is the difference between an animal and a man. Man, to deserve the name, must be educated to understand the absolute truth. Because human life is meant for knowledge, there are schools and colleges, philosophers and scientists and mathematicians. The process of eating, sleeping, mating, defending need not be taught, for they are learned instinctively. It's amazing nowadays, but because of all the sex-based crimes like rape and so on and so forth, people are saying, abortions and whatnot, forced marriages and whatnot. People are saying that there's a great need for sex education. But here Prabhupada is saying that this thing is actually not a need. It's a natural thing. There's no need to teach it. In fact, actually, because people start teaching it, I think people have become a little more, inclined towards such crimes and activities. Human life is obviously meant for more. It is meant for tapasya and knowledge, not just these four basic things. There are descriptions in the Vedas of Brahmacharya, celibacy, in which characterize the beginning of a life dedicated to tapasya. How is such a life? Smaranam kirtanam keli prekshanam guhyabhashanam sankalpo dhyavisayascha kriya nivartir evacha. Okay. To properly execute celibacy, one should not even think or even talk of sex life. Reading modern literature and newspapers which are filled with sexual material is also against the principles of Brahmacharya. Similarly, indulging in sex in any way, looking at and whispering with girls and endeavoring to engage in sex life are all against the principles of Brahmacharya. So like that, there are 8 things. If one thinks about it, the current culture is totally against all this. So it's very difficult. One executes real Brahmacharya when all these activities come to a halt. A very strict, pure, sincere life of human life, of trying to understand God. By austerity, celibacy, and control of the mind and senses, one can advance in pure life. Similarly, advancement can be made through charity, properly directed. So 2 things Prabhupada is saying. Firstly, desire for a pure life. Second thing, follow austerity, celibacy, control of mind, so on and so forth. And now Prabhupada brings about the principle of charity. This is called tyaga. So tapasya and tyaga. Renunciation. If one has $1 million, he should not keep it. But as long as it is within his jurisdiction, he should spend it for Krishna, God conscious activities. Money or energy is properly utilized when it's directed to Krishna. As soon as one quits his body, all his monetary resources and everything else that he has collected in connection with his body is finished. For the spirit soul transmigrates to another body and does not know where the money which he has earned in his previous body is kept or how it's being spent. Imagine if someone tells you that previous life you were actually a billionaire and you kept all your money. You can't even remember it. You don't even know anything. What's the point of having made so much money in the past life? A person may leave the world declaring how the money should be spent by his sons or heirs. People write wills nowadays. But even if one leaves millions of dollars in his next life, he has no claim to it. Again, we have to start from zero. Therefore, as long as it is in one's hand right now, it is better to spend it for a good purpose, especially for God-conscious activities. If one spends it for bad purposes, he becomes entangled. But if he spends it for good purposes, he gets good in return. This is very clearly stated in Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita explains that there are 3 kinds of charity. So charity in the mode of goodness, charity, passion, and charity, ignorance. So you can see Bhagavad Gita 17th chapter, 20, 21, 22 verse. Verse number 20, verse number 21, verse number 22. Speaks about the characteristics of charity in the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Satagun, Tamagun, Rajagun. A person in the mode of goodness knows where charity should be given. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Samoham sarvabhuteshu name dveshosti na priyaha yebajanti tu mam bhaktya maititeshu chapiyaham. So I just give very short what the charity in 3 modes. Goodness is a person knows exactly to whom, where, and how this money is going to benefit. Passion means a person is interested in name, fame, and what I can get out of it. Ignorance means a person does not care where the money is going, how it's being used, how it's being spent, who is going to benefit. I just gave it. Okay, that ignorance. That's not good. So Krishna says, I envy no one, I am partial to no one, I am equal to all. But whoever renders service unto me is in devotion, is a friend in me, and I am also a friend to him. Krishna is not in want of any money, for he is the original proprietor of everything. Ishavasyam idam sarvam. So when here Prabhupada writes the principle of Tyaga, giving especially a monetary thing to God, someone may think that why does God need money? No, he's the origin of all wealth, but it's good for us. But still he asks us for charity. Why? Prabhupada gives an example. Krishna, in the guise of Vamana, the dwarf Brahmana, went to beg from Bali Maharaj. God came in the form of a small dwarf boy, Brahmana, and came to beg from the king of the demons, Bali Maharaj. Even though he is Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, right? He owns all the planets, master of everything. He's the proprietor of all planets. He nonetheless say, please give in charity to me. Why? It is for our interests. For the sooner we return Krishna's money to Krishna, the better situated we will be. Again, a beautiful line. Of course, this may not be very pleasant to hear, but actually we are all thieves. We have stolen God's property. If one who has something is not God consciousness or not God conscious, it is to be understood that he has stolen God's property. Everything we have around us, everything we are using, this body, the family, the money, everything is given by God. That is the nature of material life. If this is considered thoughtfully, and if one comes to real knowledge, he will realize that if we do not understand God, whose property we are using, whatever we possess is stolen property. It is also stated in Bhagavad Gita that if one does not spend his money for yajna, sacrifice, for Krishna, sacrifice here does not mean that killing kind of sacrifice, meaning doing oblations, offering something, that what offerings. He is understood to be a thief. Yo bhungte stena evasah. Who simply enjoys is just a thief, stena. For instance, if one earns a great deal of money but tries to hide it to avoid paying income tax, the government considers him to be a criminal. He cannot say, I have earned this money. Why shall I pay tax to the government? No, he must pay or risk punishment. Similarly, in the higher sense, everything we have is Krishna's or God's, and it must be utilized in accordance with his desires. We may wish to construct a building, but where do we get the stone, wood, earth that the construction requires? We cannot artificially produce the wood. It is God's property. We cannot produce the metal. We must take it from the mine, which is also God's property. The earth and the bricks which are made from it are also God's. We simply give our labor. But that labor is also God's property. We work with our hands, but they are not our hands, but God's. For when the power to use the hand is withdrawn by God, the hand becomes useless, isn't it? Sometimes suddenly a person gets a stroke or something in the hand. He says, like, I want to control my hand, but I can't because Lord has withdrawn his power from him. We should use this great opportunity, human life, to understand all these points in which are mentioned in the authoritative books of Vedic knowledge, like Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. In the Bhagavatam, Sukadev Goswami declares that real atonement necessitates thoughtfulness, sobriety, and meditation. One must consider whether he is the body or whether he is transcendental to the body, and one must try to know what God is. These ideas are to be studied in Krishna consciousness. We should not be frivolous or waste time. If one wants this knowledge, he has to practice austerity, tapasya. And the beginning of tapasya, as already explained, is Brahmacharya, celibacy or restricted sex life. The pivot of material attraction is sex, not only for human society, but for animal society also. So they say that sex life for all living beings is the shackling, is the bound, right? What shackles us to this world. So sparrows and pigeons, they have sex 300 times daily, although they are strict vegetarians. And the lion, which is a non-vegetarian, has sex once a year. Spiritual life is not a question of vegetarianism, but of understanding higher knowledge. So many people are, it's good, of course, at least a person becomes less sinful, but that's not the goal to be vegetarian, right? One should come understand higher purposes. When one comes to the platform of elevated knowledge, he naturally becomes a vegetarian. Vegetarianism is not our goal, it's just part of the process. Pandita Samadarshina. One who is very highly learned does not distinguish between a learned scholar, a Brahmana, an elephant, a dog, and a cow. He is Samadarshi. His vision enables him to see them all equally on a spiritual level. How is that? He does not see the body, but the soul, the spiritual spark, Brahman. He thinks, here is a dog, but it's also a living entity. Although by his past karma, he has become a dog. And this learned scholar is also a living entity, a living spark, but he has taken good birth because of his past karma. When one comes to that position, he does not see the body, but the spiritual spark, and he does not distinguish between one living entity and another. Actually, we do not make distinctions between carnivores and vegetarians, non-veg, veg, for the grass has life, just as the cow or the lamb. A guideline, however, should be the Vedic instruction given in the Upanishad. Both have life. But God has given something for us and something not for us. Ishavasyam idam sarvam yatkincha jagatam jagat tena tyaktena bunjita magrada kashyasviddanam. The Lord is the controller of everything. Ishavasyam idam sarvam yatkincha jagatam jagat. From the very small to the very big, everything is controlled by God. Tena tyaktena bunjita. Take that which he has set aside for your quota. Magrada, don't be greedy. And kasyasvidhanam, take which is yours. Don't try to grasp something which is not your quota. Since everything is the property of the Supreme Lord, one can only enjoy what is allotted to him by the Lord and cannot touch another's property. According to Vedic life and according to all Vedic scriptures, a man should live on fruits and vegetables, for his teeth are made in such a way that they can be very easily eaten and digested. So these are the things, fruits and vegetables, teeth is made, you study in medical also, the body, the digestion system, it's very perfect for digesting and living on fruits and vegetables and grains. Although it is nature's law that one has to live by eating another living entity, jiva jivasya jivanam, that is the principle of the material world, very cruel. Jiva jivasya jivanam. For a jiva to live, one has to eat another jiva. Life force has to be consumed to live. We can't live on eating wood and stones. We understand that. But Prabhupada says one must use discretion. Fruits, flowers, vegetables, rice, grain, milk, they are made for human beings. They also have jiva, they are life, they have living source. Milk, for example, is an animal product, the blood of an animal transformed. But the cow delivers more milk than is needed for her calf, because milk is intended for man. Man should simply take the milk and let the cows live. And thus, following nature's law, man will be happy. Of course, take milk here means natural way, natural milking process. Tena tyaktena bunjita. One should take whatever God has allotted him and thus live comfortably. We have to elevate our consciousness through the science of Krishna. Charity is within everyone's heart, but we do not know how to make the best use of it. Whatever we spend in terms of energy should be for Krishna, for it all belongs to him. By spending for Krishna, one will not be a loser. Krishna is so kind that when you offer him food, he accepts and yet leaves everything for us to eat. Simply by offering food to Krishna, we can become devotees, because there's a loving reciprocation, like we saw in the earlier chapters. We need not spend an extra farthing, not even an extra cent. In the higher sense, everything belongs to Krishna. So Prabhupada says that you don't have to spend extra to do something. What you're doing for yourself, just put Krishna in the center. But if we offer everything to Krishna, we will be elevated. This is the sublime and proven way for advancement in pure life. So like this, we complete this chapter. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.